And camp season is in full swing with two of the biggest events happening over the weekend in Dallas and New Orleans. With the amount of talent in these two states, these camps are some of the most loaded in spring. And our experts are there sizing these players up live. And they now join us with the latest recruiting intel from the scene.
Thanks, Grace. This was another terrific battle event that was loaded with talent. Great two-day event, Saturday and Sunday. In the end, DEF CON Texas defeated Raw. It was a really good game to finish things out, but DEF CON Texas was led by really four guys, in my opinion. Class of 2026 top 100 wide receiver DB Keyshawn Henderson. Played all over the place, but for me, and he made plays, but for me, absolutely love this kid at safety. Super long, rangy, tremendous upside there. And I'll tell him that as much to his face every time I see him. But class of 2025, three-star wide receiver and defensive back and running back. Royal Capel, versatile, got open with ease. He was a great playmaker for them. Class of 2025, three-star wide receiver Jalen Cooper was a big play threat downfield. And then really the guy getting them the football, class of 2025 quarterback Chad Warner, super consistent all 2 days and really led them to victory, and he was key for them. A couple other shout-outs. Raw was outstanding all weekend long. Like I said, they just fell short. Class of 2025 top 247 quarterback and TCU commit Ty Hawkins was our alpha dog for 24/7 Sports. Strong arm, accurate, layered it extremely well. Stock up for the kid. He threw the ball really, really well. Class of 2025 top 247 wide receiver Cortez Mills was a big-time performer. He had the catch of the day, was consistent for really the 2 days. Got hurt late, which really hurt them in the title game. He was hurt right before it, so that was a tough one. Class of 2025, top 247 wide receiver Donovan Olubade. Hope I nailed that last name. He was consistent, deep ball threat, very, very fun to watch. Really like what he brings to the table. And then lastly, a guy that I had not seen before, class of 2026, cornerback Dominic Kelly has a chance to be special, man. He was so fun to watch. He's on his way to being elite. A couple other shout outs. I want to give a shout out to South Florida Express. They were terrific, especially the first night. Class of 2025, top 247 wide receiver Vernell Brown III was a touchdown machine, a absolute playmaker, dominant, also made plays as a defensive back. You have three-star Florida State commit Tramel Jones Jr. at quarterback, another class of 2025 prospect, consistent, big, live arm, best I've seen him to date. Four-star wide receiver Jamie French, a composite five-star class of 2025 playmaker, so smooth, made everything look very effortless. You also had LSU top 247 cornerback commit Jabori Antoine. He is the definition of lockdown and shutdown. He was rarely challenged, and it was simply because he was that good in the secondary. And then lastly, a guy that came out of nowhere for me was three-star defensive back out of the class of 2025, Courtney Patterson from Florida. Big time, pleasant surprise. He probably led the entire tournament in interceptions. Every time I looked, he had the ball in his hands. For Boom Football, they had a great 2 days. This kid, Jonas Williams at quarterback, class of 2026. This kid has incredible traits. Very, very excited to watch where his recruitment progresses. He made some incredible throws for the 2 days. And then lastly, class of 2025, four-star wide receiver Talon Taylor, coveted by a bunch of schools across the country. Better than expected, very smooth, very athletic, caught the ball really well, high points to football. You see why so many schools are coming after him. But look for a ton of coverage at 24/7 Sports from Battle New Orleans, from myself, from Mike Roach. But let's kick it over to Mike Roach, who was over at Under Armour Dallas, and he has a ton of coverage for you guys.
Took place this weekend. My biggest Dakorien Moore, number one wide receiver out of Duckville, fresh off the visit, and he spoke highly of his return to Baton Rouge. After the tournament, talked to 24/7. What is these schools at the moment? It's Texas, it's LSU, it's Oregon, and Ohio State. Those are the schools that, even though he's committed, he's still talking with those other schools, but he's kind of shut everybody out of the process. I think a lot of the talk in this recruitment has been which school is going to flip him. But I think that's a little bit premature. I think he committed to LSU for a reason. The trip back to Baton Rouge really strengthened his commitment. And, we'll see where it goes from here. But I think that LSU still has the upper hand in this recruitment, holding the commitment. It's easy to see why, he's such a big play threat. It's easy to see why everybody's after him. Texas and the return of Chris Gilbert as special assistant to the head coach, he was really key in establishing the original relationship between the Longhorns and Dakorien Moore. Oregon has done a phenomenal job building the relationship not only with Dakorien but with his mother and his entire family. I think they've done the best job on that front. And then Ohio State, they have a lot of things in their favor, especially with Brian Hartline, the history of wide receiver production within the program, and the fact that Devin Sanchez, a good friend of Dakorien Moore, the #1 corner in the country, is committed there and is recruiting him there. Elsewhere, we also got to see the vaunted Dallas-Fort Worth offensive tackle trio of big top 247 offensive tackles from the Dallas area. Michael Fassi from Louisville High School, Ty Haywood from Denton Ryan, and Lamont Rogers from Mesquite Horn. All three of those guys took part in the camp. All three had some really shining moments. And all three of those guys are kind of intertwined when you start looking at the schools that are recruiting them. Texas, Oklahoma, A&M, Missouri, those are 4 schools that are commonly mentioned for all 3 of those prospects. And we're getting a little clearer view of kind of where some of those guys are leaning, but I still think it's wide open for all 3 of them. And we're going to get more clarity when they start going on these official visits in the summer. I think Texas is in a good spot for Fassi, but I wouldn't count out Missouri there. I like Oklahoma at the moment for Ty Haywood, but I think Alabama could make a big push there. And I like where Texas A&M and Oklahoma stand for Lamont Rogers. So I think it's going to be, a really interesting recruitment as we watch those 3 elite tackles kind of go through and see where they'll end up. The next guy we were really impressed with was Michael Turner, a top 247 running back out of Richland, Texas. The top running back in the state of Texas. He had a phenomenal day running routes in a portion of the camp that's really hard to stand out in. Right now, at this point, SMU, Oklahoma State, Arizona State, and Florida are 4 of the schools standing out for him. USC could jump into the picture. USC just hired TCU running back coach Anthony Johnson. Once he's moved over there, if USC decides to get in, that's a guy that had a relationship with Turner prior when he was at TCU. I could see them becoming a factor. One interesting thing of note here is SMU, I think, is the in-state school best positioned for Michael Turner. But there was some talk about him wanting to get outside of state borders and probably attend school out of state. So obviously, if you're Oklahoma State, if you're Arizona, if you're Florida, or if you're USC, as we talked about, that kind of bodes well for you. And I also think that we could see more schools jump in on him during the spring evaluation period. He almost rushed for 1,700 yards last season. It was a really, really big play threat and one of the top running backs in the country overall. One of the top overall risers this spring has been North Crowley offensive lineman Henry Fanuku. Fanuku, who moved to the United States from Ghana just a few years ago and only started playing football 2 years ago, has been on a tear lately, picking up offers from schools like Texas A&M, USC, Georgia. And while those big names might impress a lot of other prospects, Fanuku was clear that his biggest priority is relationships, and the schools that have been in it the longest for him have the best relationships with him at this point. Doesn't mean that can't change going forward, but it's a big reason why SMU, Ole Miss, and Texas Tech are still kind of setting the pace in this recruitment. I really like the growth he's shown over the last few years. Again, extremely new to the game, played soccer before this, but when you look at his size and his movement ability, it's easy to see why schools are starting to come around now that they're seeing him during the evaluation period. Fanuku is going to have a round of visits this spring. He's going to try to see as many schools as possible, and we'll see if anything changes there. But right now, it is the trio, Ole Miss, SMU, and Texas Tech, that are kind of sitting out on top for him. And then finally, the top passer in the state of Texas, Keelan Russell, who just made a big jump into the top 247 from Duncanville High School. Dakorien Moore's quarterback had a monster day at Under Armour Dallas. He was named our alpha dog by our scouting team, Gabe Brooks and Hudson Standish, and really stood out above the crowd when you watched him throw the ball in consistent settings. An SMU commit, Keelan Russell, is going to be a guy that they're going to have to really fight for. There's some SEC schools, Florida, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss involved for him. UCLA is getting into the picture. Texas has even been in contact. This is going to be a battle for SMU to keep him at home, And because this is a quarterback that is kind of a game changer for a program like that moving into the ACC. We'll see kind of how things go as he makes these visits during the spring and during the summer. But I think it's going to get really interesting. I think this is going to be the most intriguing recruitment to watch in the Lone Star State. And it's easy to see why teams love him so much. He's led Duncanville to 2 straight state championships. He's gone from a complete unknown to completely undeniable in the span of 2 years. For more on Midwest recruiting, we're going to go to Allen Trieu.
Thanks, Mike. And Tom, you heard Tom Loy mention wide receiver Talon Taylor, a 4-star prospect who certainly made some noise down at Battle in New Orleans over the weekend. Talon has told us that he has now set 4 spring unofficial visits. He's going to start off at Georgia on March 23rd, get to Ohio State on March 30th, and then visit Notre Dame and Michigan early in April. Right now, those are 4 of the top schools in his recruitment. He's going to take a look at maybe getting to some other schools like Ole Miss and UCLA, but I like where Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Michigan stand. Obviously, 3 of those schools are in the Midwest. Georgia is not, but he had a really, really good visit with the Bulldogs in the winter. This is going to be an important visit for Georgia because since that visit, wide receivers coach Brian McClendon, who Talon was very, very close to, has gone to the NFL. So he's going to have a chance to go down there, revisit with the staff, and then also meet new wide receivers coach James Coley. So that's going to be huge for the Bulldogs' chances. At Ohio State, he has a great relationship with wide receivers coach Brian Hartline, and their history of development is big for him. He told me that was one of the main criteria in his recruitment. He wanted coaching stability and to be developed for the next level. The Buckeyes offer that. Notre Dame and Michigan also offer that. He's close with Mike Brown, wide receivers coach at Notre Dame, and Ron Bellamy, wide receivers coach at Michigan. So I think those are the 4 schools right now that have the best chance at him. He has not set any official visits. He may do so after taking these spring officials and look to work towards a summer decision. He definitely wants to be committed before his senior year. Moving to another 4-star wide receiver and a guy who is new to the 4-star ranks, that's John Anthony Hall out of the state of Indiana, who climbed into the top 247 in the most recent update. Just an outstanding athlete from Fishers, Indiana. He just set up an official visit with Indiana. That is to go along with an official visit he already set up with Purdue. So the 2 in-state schools are battling for him, and we're seeing new Hoosiers coach Kurt Signetti and Boilers head coach Ryan Walters run into each other a lot more on the trail so far in this 2025 cycle. The Boilers won a battle this morning for in-state defensive lineman Landon Brooks, who had official visits set with both schools but committed to the Boilers before ever taking that official to Bloomington. I don't think that's going to happen with John Anthony Hall. I do believe he's going to take both of these officials. I do think there's some other schools in the mix to earn an official visit from him, but right now it looks like a Hoosier Boiler in-state battle for one of the newest 4-star prospects in the top 247. And then finally, Nebraska is going to get an official visit June 21st weekend from in-state linebacker, defensive athlete Pierce Mooberry. He's a Husker legacy, but he said that he's going to give other schools a chance. You see him here playing safety, but with his size, he's going to likely move into the box at the next level. That's where schools are recruiting him. He's also going to take a spring visit to Nebraska. So the Huskers are going to get him on campus 2 times in the next few months. He is going to do what he said and give some other schools an opportunity. He's going to visit Minnesota. They were one of the first schools to offer him. He's also going to get to Kansas State, another school who has offered him. And then he's going to get down to Tuscaloosa and visit with the new Bama staff. Alabama has not offered him yet, but they have been in contact, and Kalen DeBoer and his coaches have been wanting to get him on campus now and build a relationship with him. So even though the crystal ball says Nebraska, and I'm leaning towards joining on that crystal ball, Pierce Mooberry definitely giving some of these other schools a look. And when Bama's lurking, you certainly can't count them out in this recruitment.